So we're continuing to speak about angels in this first chapter of the 13 Petalled Rose. The last concept is a concept that we've mentioned now quite a few times, and that is that angels are created when we perform mitzvot. For every mitzvah that we create, a good angel is created, and that good angel stays with us really forever. That's a permanent angel that is with us in this world and in the next. In this world, it protects us. In the next, it advocates for us. And that's the power of doing a mitzvah. If the mitzvah is done with a full heart, then that angel also is so-called a healthy angel that functions fully. If it's done with half a heart or without any intention at all, then the angel is still created, but it's not an angel that is as healthy as the one that is created with a full heart. Anyway, that's the last concept. And speaking of angels, many other ideas were shared, but I want to continue here in the middle of this paragraph on top of page 8, and that is in this world of formation. Does anyone want to read? Anyone? Please, Julie, go for it.
That the mitzvah acquires substance. This is the process by which the specific message or offering to God that is intrinsic in the mitzvah rises upward and introduces changes in the system of the highest worlds, foremost in the world of formation. From here, in turn, they influence the worlds above them. So we see that a supreme act is performed when what is done below becomes detached from a particular physical place, time, and person, and becomes an angel.
Right. So a few things here. A few things were said. Number one, we're again emphasizing that the world of angels is really the world of formation. That's where the angels reside. This is the world that is right above this world. This world is the world of action. The world of formation is above it, and that's where the angels reside. And that's where those angels that we create through our mitzvot go to. Now, they go to that world, but they are very active in that world in many ways, as we said, in the ways of protecting us, of serving as a good advocates, but also in bringing a mitzvah, so to speak, carrying a mitzvah to God himself, saying, hey, here's this mitzvah from this person, and therefore pay him back, reward this person. And it really just emphasizes this idea that every mitzvah that we do is not just a good deed. By the way, the words good deed don't translate the word mitzvah. It's a made-up translation. Mitzvah means connection. It comes from the word savta or tzevet, which means to connect. And in many ways, when we do a mitzvah, not just a good deed, but we do a mitzvah, not only do we connect to God and connect to ourselves, obviously, but we create this ripple effect. We create this massive transformation in this world and in the next. That's why every mitzvah really is can potentially be world-changing, to the point that I think we've quoted Maimonides has said that any mitzvah and every mitzvah can tip the scale and bring about redemption to the whole world. Why? Not just because of this idea that there's a scale, but because this idea that every mitzvah really is an atomic bomb, so to speak. It creates this energy and these angels that really can change the course of history, certainly the course of our own lives altogether. That's why we should never undermine any mitzvah. Ethics of our Father says that mitzvah kala kevachamura, that the mitzvahs that seem so small in your eyes, you should consider them as massive, as very weighty. Chamura. That's maybe the better translation. Because even those small mitzvahs, or those apparently small mitzvahs, can really create a massive, massive change. And you never know which mitzvah will be the one that will tip that scale, that will create that change. But we do know that, again, Kabbalistically, these mitzvahs, at least on some dimension, already create this change. Whether we see them, whether we actually see the effect that they have or not, that's a different story, but they still create a transformational change. And therefore, if we would know, as we said, if we know the power of mitzvahs, we'd be doing them all the time. And I'm not talking about, one mitzvah over another, any mitzvah, whether it's giving a coin to tzedakah or learning Torah like we're doing right now, or any mitzvah really, can create that, does create that transformational change. As far as, just to go back to the ideas of the angels, and again, I don't want this to be just a monologue, so please ask any questions, share any ideas, and so on. But as far as those angels are concerned, so we've spoken about the different types of angels that exist. Now, you have angels that come and go, right? They are sent for specific missions and then they disappear. You have angels like the angel Michael, the angel of kindness, for example, that are more powerful angels and they are eternal. But we don't create them. God creates them, and God sends them to very specific mission throughout history. But then you have angels that are created by us. Now, those are the good angels and those are the bad angels. When we do a sin, God forbid, then we called it a deviation, not a sin. If you remember, if we do a deviation, which is the literal translation of chet, which is usually translated as sin, but it's not, then we create a bad angel that also serves as a bad advocate or the prosecution team, so to speak, unless we do teshuvah. And then that angel dies, that angel goes away, disappears. The good angels that we create, though, stay forever and ever, as we said. Bad angels don't cancel good angels. Good angels don't cancel bad angels. It's two separate things. Just like deeds don't cancel one another. It's not that if you're going to give now $10 billion to tzedakah, that means that now you can act like the most corrupt man in the world. One doesn't cancel the other. It's two different worlds. Same it is with angels. They don't cancel one another. But the power, just to speak of this specific type of angel, the power of the mitzvah angels, or the angels created by mitzvahs, is a power that is stronger than all other angels, or most other angels, I should say. Even stronger than the angel Michael, for example. Now, there are things that these angels can achieve that even Michael cannot achieve. By Hasidic Jews, there's a common expression that a Hasidic Farbrengen, which is a Hasidic gathering in which people open up to one another and they really exercise their true love for one another, not just in feeling and in words, but also in action, because every Hasidic Farbrengen has to have good resolutions. But a Hasidic Farbrengen can achieve much more than the angel Michael can achieve. That's a common expression. The Lubavitcher Rebbe would say it quite often. But when Jews gather together to really care for one another, that creates angels that are far superior to the angel Michael. So we see that the power of those angels that are created by mitzvot is stronger than the angels created by God himself, the good angels created by God himself. So that's another reason why we shouldn't undermine mitzvahs. Really, every mitzvah, even the smallest mitzvah, can create an angel. Imagine, that's stronger than the angel Michael. And many ways, that's transformational in and of itself. I would say that's also a unique opportunity that we have in this world. You see, in the upper worlds, after 120, when we pass, we won't be able to create those angels anymore. What we've created is what we've created. You can't replenish or you can't fill your storage anymore. And that, again, shows why we should do as many mitzvahs as we can here in this world. Yes, Julie.
If you created an angel because you did like kind of a good deed and good stuff, that angel stays with you for the rest of your life. And then
In this world and in the next, yes.
Oh, that's what I was gonna ask.
Yeah.
When you pass away, that angel still stays with you?
Yeah. Not only does it stay with you, but it speaks for you. So when we face the heavenly court that judges us in the upper world, when we pass, those angels serve as your defense team, so to speak. They become our lawyers. That's right. Become our lawyers, and they represent us in many, many ways. Just gonna add Jordan here. Yeah. And then afterwards, okay, so the question is, okay, fine. So now we've had this judgment. They've represented us. What happens afterwards? Afterwards, they help carry us from one level to the next. And many ways, they are our boosters. They are our batteries, so to speak.
Or like very expensive lawyers, we need to make a super good deed, so we get the.
Yeah, but even the smallest deed can be a super good deed, like we said, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
They carry us to the different levels after we've passed away, is that what?
Yes, they stay
so
with
they're
us even after we pass on.
And
Exactly.
that's when they carry us to the.
Exactly, from level to level.
Okay.
Yeah. What's level to level? Let me just explain. We say that because when a person passes on, we often say the common, I'm sure you've heard it, the common greeting or blessing that people say is that the neshama should have an aliyah, which means the soul should have an ascent to the next level. What does that mean? Well, where are they ascending to? And the answer is really that there are infinite levels of heavenly pleasures. And they're infinite because God is infinite, so the levels are infinite. And the angels that are created by doing mitzvahs carry the soul from one level to another, where the soul has the opportunity in that next level to really experience deeper levels of pleasure for the soul. And these are pleasures that are incomparable to any type of physical pleasure. It's true in this world. Soulful pleasure are incomparable to physical pleasures. For example, hearing good news that's incomparable to any. We heard of the hostages being released, it's incomparable to any physical pleasure in this world. Music maybe is a type of pleasure, maybe. Let's see what else. Prayer, good deeds, doing a good deed is a soulful pleasure. But even in this world, we are very limited in our ability to experience that. Because again, we have a body. But in the upper worlds, the soul can really unleash its power to experience those pleasures. And again, the higher we go, the deeper that pleasure is. Now, the angels can carry us, and the mitzvahs that we did in this world can carry us. But most importantly, the mitzvahs that people do on our behalf in this world, once we pass on, can affect those that ascent even more. That's why, really, if you think about it, in Yizkor, the prayer is that I'm mentioning so and so. Why? Ba'avur sheniten tzedakah ba'ado. That we're going to give charity in loving memory of this person. That's what we say in Yizkor. In every Kama Lerachamim prayer, every memorial prayer says that we're going to give tzedakah on behalf of the person that we're mentioning. Now, if you think about this, is that really appropriate? Is that a time to solicit people? I mean, people are now deep in their emotions. They're grieving, and you're going to ask them for money? You're telling them to give tzedakah? Why even mention it in the prayer? Just keep it clean, keep it pure, keep it spiritual. Why mention tzedakah? And the answer is exactly based on what we're saying. That is that if you really want to honor that soul, do a mitzvah on behalf of the soul, a mitzvah that they can't do anymore. If you do a mitzvah on behalf of the soul, then it brings them an angel. It brings them this light that brings them the greatest pleasure.
So you can give angels to others.
So
to the soul.
Yes. Those angels that you create on behalf of others can go to others too. They'll stay with you too because it's your mitzvah, but they can also be there for the others. That's why there's the best way to honor people that are deceased that we love is to do mitzvahs on their behalf. Yeah, for sure. Because if we want to go into it, so what's a yahrzeit? A yahrzeit is a day of passing, right? But that's when Kabbalah teaches us that the soul comes down to this world. A yahrzeit in many ways is their yearly visit to this world. The soul comes down to, that's why we go to the grave on a yahrzeit, because that's their channel of communication, of connection to this world. So that's where we meet them. And on the yahrzeit, when we meet them, we want to be able to say, hey, we brought you a little gift. So here's a mitzvah, or here's a few mitzvahs. Yes.
So if you do a mitzvah on behalf of somebody deceased, you have to name that person? I mean, if you have a lot of relatives that are deceased.
Yeah, so you name, what are you asking? If you have to name them in the prayer? Yeah,
But
yeah. So you absolutely, you can say this candle, yeah, this mitzvah I'm doing on your behalf. Yeah, then the mitzvah still counts for you. For you. But look, you can't do a mitzvah that anyway you have to do, like Shabbat candles. I don't know if I like that example, because anyway you have to do that mitzvah. So anyway you do it. It's not, you're not doing an extra mitzvah on behalf of someone else. So I don't know how much it counts for that other person, because you really have to do it for you. You have to do it for the other person. But if you do a mitzvah that you don't necessarily have to do, and you do it nonetheless for another person, that's when that mitzvah counts for that other person. Because it's completely for that person, not for you. Yeah.
Started class, and so they give mention to the daughter at the beginning of the class to give their soul a bit of an idea. But the fact that everybody's learning Torah, that's how they honor their daughter.
Very good. And the daughter receives that mitzvah. The soul of the daughter receives that mitzvah. It's a beautiful thing.
Is that the only way for the soul to go up?
To ascend? Well, every yard site, there's an ascent no matter what. There's an ascent. They visit this world and then they go back to a higher level from where they came. But we can help the souls go up, not just on their own yard sites, but even on a regular Tuesday morning. It's all dependent on us. Absolutely. It's a lot of pressure, but it's fine. We like pressure. We love pressure. Yes, Seth.
So, you mentioned ascent. Is there also descent?
That's a great question. So the soul, as we said, can ascend, but can the soul descend also? Descend, not just ascend. So it can descend from the pleasures that it's in, but it can be affected. It can not descend, but it can be affected. I think that's the word, by bad deeds that we do in this world, or by, for example, over grieving a soul. That's why they say that, especially during the first year, one should not visit the grave of their loved one too often. Because if we visit the grave, especially in the first year when the emotions are still very raw, then it will cause overextended mourning. And when we extend our mourning, it brings pain to the soul. The soul wants us to be happy. So when the soul that we love and that loves us sees us in a sad state, it brings the soul sadness. You don't want to over mourn. Not to deviate, I'm going to share a story. I think I've shared it in the past, but in a faraway past, I can reshare it. But this is a story that happened, I think it was in 2007, 2008. There's a great program called Right for Israel. Not RIGHT, but WRITE. If you've heard of it, Right for Israel is a program that gathers talented writers in campuses across America, young students, and they take them to Israel for 6 weeks. And after 6 weeks, they ask these people to become the ambassadors of Israel in their own newspapers and writings. Anyway, not too long ago, there was a group of Right for Israel that went to Israel. And at the very last day, they went to Har Herzl to visit Mount Herzl, where many of the soldiers that were killed during the wars of Israel are buried, including many of the soldiers that were killed this year in Gaza and in other places. But so they were in Har Herzl, and one of the students, her name is Daniela Greenbaum, if I'm not mistaken, as she's touring with a group these graves, she sees an elderly couple crying over a specific grave in a cemetery. So she decides to approach them. She says to them, "See you crying over a grave. Are you related to this person who died?" And they say to her, "Yes, actually, it's our son." "Oh, what brings you here? Is it his yard site?" "No, it's not his yard site." And the mother, Pnina Deri, says, "I actually had a dream with my son last night, And that's why my husband and I just came this morning, following up the dream that I had. So Daniela says to Pnina, do you mind telling me the dream? Pnina says, yeah, sure, I'll tell you. See, my son died in one of the wars. His tank flipped and he was killed. Erez Deri is his name. And last night he came to me in a dream. And he said to me, Mommy, stop crying over me. Move on with life. And the mother, Pnina, says to her son in a dream, I wish I could. But my lifelong dream was to bring you under your chuppah. And we didn't get to that day because you were killed too soon. You didn't get married. And the son says to her mother in the dream, says, I understand, Mommy, but in Judaism, you can bring something else under a chuppah. And if you bring that something else under a chuppah, it will be as if you brought me under the chuppah, and that will bring you comfort. What's that something else? A Torah. If you dedicate a Torah, you first dance with it in the street under a chuppah. So the mother wakes up and she immediately writes down her dream, and then she realizes, oh, that's a beautiful dream, but I don't have the money to buy Torah. A Torah is what, $50,000 at least, or even more. So she tells Daniela, that's why we came to our son's grave to pray that he helps us find the money. Daniela Greenbaum is so moved by this, she runs back to her group and she says, you won't believe their story. Look at them. You know, that's their son, and so on and so forth. And she had a dream last night. Let's help her out. If we each give $750, then she'll be able to pay for a Torah. And they all agreed to pay for this Torah. Some said that, they'll wire the money when they get back to America. Some gave it on the spot. Anyway, a few months later, Pnina and Gidon Deri were dancing in the streets of the neighborhood in Ma'ale Adumim, just outside of Jerusalem, with a new Torah dedicated to the loving son, Erez Deri. Many students from that group came to celebrate with her, came back to Israel. And at one point, Pnina Deri grabbed the microphone and she said, I want to thank these students. This is the first time in which I feel the weight of mourning finally lifted from my shoulders. Now, why am I telling you this story? Because it's very much connected to what we're saying. First of all, the souls are with us. Souls of our loved ones are always with us. And they feel our pain. And they don't descend because of our pain, but they are affected by our pain. And when we overmourn them, it affects them. They see us that we are sad and we can't move on with life. It affects them. And secondly, if we do a mitzvah on their behalf, if we bring a Torah, which is the mitzvah that Erez asked his mother to do in the dream, then it's filling a hole that was there, and it's almost making him get married. And it elevates the soul. It brings tremendous pleasure to the soul. So this dream alone proves everything that we're saying right here. Yes.
What happened to those who kill themselves, or even worse, that they get cremated? Will their soul ever go to heaven?
That's a good
Is
question.
there any possibility for us left in this world to take them out of their hole where they are out there because they did what they were supposed to do?
Right. So the question was, what happens to those who commit suicide, and can they be redeemed? And or those who are cremated, which is a prohibition in Judaism, can they be redeemed? Look, I'll say that we don't know how God judges man. In fact, there used to be this idea that maybe those who commit suicide should not be buried in cemeteries because it's such an atrocious sin. It's equated to murder. You're murdering yourself. But then the sages also deducted that we don't know what type of monster takes over a person who wants to commit suicide. And when they actually committed suicide, one of two things happened. Either they regretted it at the last second, but it was too late. Right? Someone jumps off a roof, maybe as he's passing the 7th floor, he regrets it, and you don't know.
Right.
Yeah. That's one thing. And therefore, that we should see that person with compassion and forgiveness. And secondly, also, that it's not them who killed themselves, and some monster that killed them. Some people suffer from tremendous depression, and that's what kills them. So it's not them, and therefore we also should see them with compassion and forgiveness, as I'm sure God does. So people who commit suicide, I'm sure are forgiven, and I'm sure that God has a way for them to ascend also from level to level. Same with people who are cremated. Obviously, people are cremated against their will, like the holy 6 million Jews of the Holocaust. There's no higher level than that. They don't need to be forgiven because they don't do anything wrong. Those who are cremated by their own will and volition, then again, I'm sure God finds a way to forgive them.
We can help them ascend, or they're just irredeemable.
Certainly we can help them. We can not only help them in many ways, it's our duty to help them even more than we would help others. By doing mitzvahs. Mitzvahs, yes, absolutely, in their loving memory, yeah.
Survivors of the Nova Festival and people who were in the army and some of the hostages over 50 that committed suicide.
Of the Nova Festival? I know there was one girl not long ago, yeah. Yes, Julie.
Anyone to do any of this work.
Mm.
You don't have kids, you don't have brothers and sisters, and
Beautiful. That's a great question. That's another story. That reminds me of another story that also happened at Har Herzl, Mount Herzl. But I don't know if you know that at Har Herzl, has anyone here been to Har Herzl, to Mount Herzl, to see these graves? I mean, it's really one thing you should do when you go to Israel, because you learn so much. First of all, it's a holy place. All these people are righteous. It doesn't get more righteous than that. In fact, Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, who was one of the great halakhic authorities living in Jerusalem and died about 30 years ago, a little less actually, 20 years ago. He often said that he doesn't know why people go all the way to Tzfat, to the north of Israel, to pray on the graves of the righteous, like, Rabbi Akiva was in Tiberias, but Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was in Meron, and so on. When the Arizal is in Tzfat, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, when they could just go to Jerusalem, to Mount Herzl, and pray on the graves of the soldiers, because they're just as righteous. So it's really a beautiful thing to go to the graves of the righteous, and at the same time to learn so much. But there's a grave there in the 1948 section, which is the section of the Independence War of Israel, that doesn't have a name on the tombstone. The only name that you'll find is Ploni Almoni, which means anonymous. And one day, there was, not long ago, I've told this story too, I'll make it brief. There was a group of young Israeli teenagers who were visiting Mount Herzl, and their tour guide was telling them this Ploni Almoni is a soldier who died in 1948. He came straight from the Holocaust. His entire family was decimated in the Holocaust. And as soon as he landed in Israel, they gave him a rifle. They said, hey, there's a war coming. You better fight. And he went and he fought. And everyone in his unit, the only people who really knew him, were killed with him. So when they found him, they didn't know who he was. They didn't know his name. And they just buried him and put on the tombstone, Ploni Almoni. And the kids asked that same question. So who's saying Kaddish for him? Who's lighting a yahrzeit candle for him? Who's doing mitzvahs for him? And the tour guide says, I don't know. A few months later, the tour guide receives a phone call from these teenagers. And the teenagers tell the tour guide, Eldad is his name, we found Ploni Almoni's family. We found his family, and that family agreed to do Kaddish and to do mitzvahs on his behalf. And Eldad says, it's impossible. How could you have found his family? We've been searching for years. It's impossible. What are you talking about? He says, yes, we found his family. Who's his family? Teenager says, we're his family. And we took upon ourselves to say Kaddish and to do mitzvahs on his behalf. So in many ways, to answer your question, we can all be family. We are all family, really. Jews are one big family. We all come from the same family. So if a person dies and he doesn't have relatives to do Kaddish, we still are his spiritual relatives. And then it's incumbent upon the people who at least know of this case to do a mitzvah, to say Kaddish, to
like, would that person be covered?
Yeah,
You know what I mean? When you're-
absolutely. There should be. In fact, I know actually just every year before Yizkor, both on Passover, on
Yeah.
Shmini Atzeret, and so on, I think it's the chief rabbinate of Israel, publish a list of souls like that don't have family to say Yizkor for them, etc. And they ask synagogues to say it. Yeah. Yeah, a good point. So in other words, doing mitzvahs on behalf of our loved ones, don't worry. We'll be fine. First of all, you'll live until 120, and Mashiach will be a year by then, so we'll live forever. So there's nothing to worry about. But just to emphasize again, that really means that we can do, if we know someone, if we have a friend who passed, if we know someone who passed, we can do mitzvahs. That's not limited to the family only. We can do mitzvahs on their behalf. And that angel will go all the way to the soul. Okay. Anything else? We can continue. But no? Yes, Sue, please.
This is 13 mitzvahs. I mean, I know it's in the Torah.
Yeah, so we just spoke about it in the previous class. Maimonides has a book called Sefer HaMitzvot, the Book of Mitzvot. And it's a book strictly written for that reason, to list all of the 613 commandments. Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, Maimonides is not the only one to have it. I know that Rabbeinu Bechaye also has a list like that. There's a few other books, but Maimonides is probably the most famous. Yeah. Okay, let's continue. Middle of page 8. Conversely, anyone? Well, you want to continue, Julie? Go for it.
Conversely, an angel is sometimes sent downward from a higher world to a lower. For what we call the mission of the angel can be manifested in many different ways. The angel cannot reveal its true form to man, whose being, senses, and instruments of perception belong only to the world of action. In the world of action, there are no meanings of grasping the angel.
Mm-hmm.
It continues to belong to a different dimension, even when apprehended in one form or another. This may be compared with those frequencies of an electromagnetic field that are beyond the limited range ordinarily perceived by our senses. We know that human vision assimilates only a small fragment of the spectrum. As far as our senses are concerned, the rest of it does not exist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just yeah. So obviously our physical senses cannot grasp the spiritual worlds that are around us. Can only grasp the physical world that is around us through our senses and through the 5 senses mainly. But doesn't mean that the spiritual worlds don't exist. Angels do exist, but sometimes our physical eyes, not sometimes, always our physical eyes cannot see those angels. On the other hand, I will say that I have no doubt that there are righteous people, I'm sure like the Lubavitcher Rebbe of blessed memory, who could see angels. You have to develop not your physical eyesight for that, but rather your spiritual eyesight for that. And in fact, in the Torah itself, we see that people saw angels. Abraham, at one point during the visit of the 3 angels to Abraham, he saw those angels. You have people who have a refined spiritual eyesight who can see angels. They say that, I remember once there's a seer in Israel. Ilana is a name, but I remember once being in a hospital with her, and she said, look, you see that patient? There's 3 angels around his head. And by the way, it's consistent with what it says in the Zohar and Jewish law also, that when a person is sick, there are 3 angels by his head that come to heal the person. That's why there's a halakhic implication to that. That's why when you visit a sick person at a hospital, you can't stand by his head, stand by the side, because the head area is occupied already by 3 angels. But anyway, so she claimed to see the 3 angels. So, and I believe that some people can see angels, but it doesn't mean that our physical eyes can see them, but rather our spiritual eyes can see them. And sometimes we can't see them, not with our physical, not with our spiritual eyes, but maybe we can sense them. I really believe that when you enter a place that is holy and you sense that holiness, for example, the Western Wall, then you're not just sensing the holiness of the place, but you're sensing the many angels that belong to that place, that maybe were created also in that place. So I think we can, like Rabbi Stein says here, we can't see them, but we can certainly sense them if our spiritual senses are refined. So anyway,